And ladies and gentlemen, here we are. It is Tuesday. Let me look at the date. September 29th. Yes, it is time for Litvak Leadership Live. And we have a very resounding, seasoned guest today that the more I thought about what I was going to discuss with him, the more excited I got. Yes, let me introduce you to George Henderson. He is... What are you, George? George is a senior enterprise account manager with a cybersecurity organization. So many directions we can go with this. George, before we go any further, why don't you give a brief thumbnail sketch of your background before I pummel you with questions?
Well, it's been a long road. I've been in the IT industry probably close to 35 years now. I actually started on the technical side of the business. I was a field engineer many years ago in the New York, mainly in the Wall Street area. And then I had an opportunity to move out to Wisconsin and never thought I'd be leaving the East Coast. And I decided to pursue that.
Yeah.
That really started my my travel ventures. So I had a great mentor that, I had a chance where some people were trying to recruit me into the sales and marketing environment. And he said, he goes, in management and leadership, he said, that's not necessarily for everybody. And this was in my 20s. And he said, my suggestion was stick with it as long as you can technically. Then if you want to make the switch, if you had to fall back on something, you could fall back on the highest or senior position on the technical side of things.
Okay.
I thought about it, made sense to me. I pursued it and very glad that I did. While there, then I moved several places. I'm kind of a gypsy, so I lived in Wisconsin, Minnesota, Chicago, both Houston and Austin, overseas. And then I got into new market development, and that took me into the international business. And while there, I was opening up subsidiaries around the world for Compact Computer Corporation, Compact Classic. So it took me literally, many, many places, many countries, large and small, panned the entire globe, and it was a great experience. But during my time at Compact, and we were bringing out new products, we would introduce them, bring them to market, and then the sales guys were always saying, "Hey, why don't you come with us, man? Why don't you come out and go out to these client meetings? We want you to talk to these people about new products and new technology."
Yeah.
So in the midst of doing that, we got onto a conversation about how much you guys get in compensation, what's your commissions like, and they were very open about it. And
you were like, "Oh my God!"
Is history, Sean. The rest is history. I made the leap, never looked back. Been doing sales for over 20 years now, and love it.
Cool. So 2 quick comments from the smarmy pants of Eric Bam. Rumor, George never smiles. And I see a slight smile on his face there, so I think that's a lie. And secondly, will Solomon be participating in the show again today? So he must have been barking the other day. I don't think so, but we'll find out soon enough. So George, And my first introduction to George, truth be told, for anyone watching this, is George is part of our Megamind group. And when he first joined the group, George ended up getting this enormous sale. And he made mention, not specifically, but, we can read between the lines. And so when he made this huge sale, I was like, "Ooh, we've got a player amongst us. Here we go now." So what I want to know, George, is with your vast wisdom and knowledge, and we're going to get into that. My mother-in-law, my 81-year-old mother-in-law, is concerned that Social Security is listening to her through her cell phone. Who is listening to her?
Her paranoia is well fed.
Okay.
Not necessarily say who is listening, but be rest assured that people are recording all conversations, and any conversation you have on phones, that's being recorded somewhere. It's being preserved. It can't be exercised or accessed or anything like that unless there was some kind of a legal reason why.
Okay, keep going. I just got to give myself light since My light died on me.
Well, I think the other thing too is, it's a relatively new phenomenon in the security industry. They call it OSINT, and it stands for Open Source Intelligence.
Okay.
So anything that you do on social media, anything that's available in the public domain, so anything available in the public internet, there are companies that they actually will access that for a number of reasons. So think about it as your HR department is trying to look at hiring a new person. So one way that you could do it, and this is done all the time, is in the vetting process, that you could go out there and look at what this person is posting there socially. What are they saying? Who are they saying it to? So there's any number of uses for it. And then there are organizations that mine that data. And the way that they do that is they actually scrape it. They have brokers that sell it. So when you go out there and do searches, depending on the company and the technology that they have, they will actually preserve and save that search. And then they could sell that to somebody else for data analytics or analysis purposes.
So should seasoned citizens be more concerned or less concerned than their millennial counterparts that they're going to be taken advantage of in a cybersecurity kind of way?
So to me, that's really a two-part question. And the first part is I think that really stems to privacy.
Okay.
And everybody's concerned, especially from an individual standpoint, they're concerned about privacy.
All right.
This really started in 2018 when Europe introduced the GDPR. A lot of people may have heard that. Doesn't really mean much to them, but really it's preservation of private information for the individuals and to prevent corporate misuse and abuse.
Okay.
And it also protects, Europeans. Like, so if you had a company in the US and you had a certain percent of your staff was European, then the rules apply. So it's not like just GDPR is in Europe. And if you don't maintain compliance with the regulations, there are steep, heavy fines. Prior to GDPR, they had something similar to that, but it was more or less a slap on the wrist. It wasn't really meaningful. Now you're talking about millions and millions of dollars from major corporations. The second part about that, it then comes into, from a corporate perspective, big or small, including, the Fortune 20 type companies, is reputation. When you read about and you hear about all of these hacks, all of these breaches, what is and that's one of the biggest concerns that, in the C-suite that they have is what is going to be the impact of our business and our reputation? What is the going concern? I mean, how are our consumers and clients going to think about us? Are they going to want to continue to do business with us? And then, of course, the financial impact from that, because if it does severe enough damage, it may take a period of time to recover from that. And it could be a year from now, it could be multiple years from now. What's the impact of revenue to be? So it really is multifaceted on how it may impact somebody.
So these cyber criminals, or let's just call them criminals, that leverage technology, who are they going after? Are they from Russia? Are they from Kazakhstan? And do they have a specific focus, or are they just after everybody?
C, all of the above.
Okay.
They're not just limited. A lot of them are syndicates. A lot of them are private hackers. You could even go back 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and there were groups that were identified that actually, they knew exactly who they were and where they came from. Sometimes it was difficult to really prove and validate exactly who they were. But then 5 years later, it's kind of like what we're experiencing now with coronavirus. One of the biggest concerns that we have is a new strain. So what's the next strain going to be like, and are we going to be able to prevent it? It's the same thing with ransomware and malware. There's certain attacks that have occurred and happened over the course of time and over the years. And now it's really a new strain or a new way of doing it. But the adversaries that are doing it, they're a lot more sophisticated than they've ever been. It feels like we as the good guys are always on the defensive trying to catch up, because every time we do something and build a better, bigger mousetrap, they're finding out new ways with which to infiltrate. I mean, because the thing about it is, regardless of the size of your company, what is it that they really want? And that's your intellectual property, your intellectual capital. They want access to the data.
something they can sell.
So we're always looking at it, think about it in the medieval times when you had a castle, you built a moat around it, and that provided protection. Well, now everybody's talking about, protecting my perimeter, protecting my endpoint. So you can't get in. They come to the door, they can't get in. But they're
All they need is one little keyhole, though.
And that happens.
That somebody makes, and bam, it all goes down.
Probably the ones that are most common, and I'm sure a lot of people on this call have heard of phishing attacks, or they're very, very, very smart in their techniques. They'll actually contact somebody in your company, befriend them. Next thing you know, that somebody's given them innocuously their credentials, their email, their password, or something like that, and they're very, very clever on how they go about doing it. But really, the approach that they take is they want to get in there, and then they really want to land and expand. And what I mean by that is that it's all about lateral movement.
Oh, okay.
So literally, they'll infiltrate somebody, and it could be weeks. So hopefully your organization has sophisticated enough technology that it'll capture it, or at least identify that, hey, wait a minute, something's wrong here. But they'll literally just sit there, and it's like, okay, I'm here now. I want to go to that next increment, and the next increment, and the next increment, and the next one. And then once they get to that point to where they can make that next quantum leap or jump, then they get to the holy grail. And that's where they want to get, that key critical information, the things that are germane to your company that you absolutely want to protect at all times.
So our organization that I work for, the Vanaken Group, we are very technologically advanced, so much so that our IT department sends phishing tests to us to see if we fall down on them. They use a service. And if you do, you get to go through, you have the honor of going through a 45-minute mandatory retraining that if you don't do it within a certain time frame, they turn off your email and your computer remotely. And it's not one of those retrainings where you just keep hitting next, next, next. Oh, no, there's no way to move from screen to screen until it's done with the lesson. And then it asks questions, and you have to get it right. You want to talk about a motivation to not click on a link, because this guy has messed up twice in 9 months, and it was painful each time.
Well, not only do they do that, they also do that with the executives. And you may or you may not be shocked or surprised at how many senior executive organizations fall prey to the same tactic.
No, they're as stupid as we are.
But yeah, how many people on this call today are? They probably go through their email. They might see a hyperlink, within that, and they don't think twice about it. They're probably getting more concerned because you read enough about it, you hear enough about it, that you're at least starting to look at the header. So you can literally just hover your mouse over the top of the header and see what the true email address is, and it'll show you what the URL link is. But how many times are you embedded in the email? You have an embedded link, and you don't do the same thing. Good best practice is to look at it.
And you can do that on your computer. It's when you get on your cell phone that the technology hasn't caught up as well on the computer. Because every time I've screwed up, it's been on my cell phone because it doesn't show the fake link. So we got a two-part question from two people. The first part, I'm going to tell you both parts, is from Eric Bam. Are you concerned about Russia? And the second part is from Mark Gassert. And his question is, do these hacks happen more in other countries versus the U.S.? Those just seem kind of linked to me.
So, Russia is definitely a formidable foe. I would say the areas that most likely you're going to see and get the most prestige and recognition, if you want to call it that, Russia, Iran, North Korea, China. Those are the ones that probably have the biggest, China has literally a legion of people in their military ranks that all they do is just work on malicious adversaries, threats, attacks, sophisticated, highly sophisticated. And that's something that we as both a country, we as business enterprises, we as individuals, we need to pay attention to it. We need to really, a lot of times people look at it from a security standpoint, almost comparable as a life insurance policy.
Okay.
Well, think about it. In a way, it kind of is life insurance, but for technology. In the last 3 to 5 years, cybersecurity insurance policies have gone up through the roof. I mean, there's a lot of companies that are offering it, and it used to be smaller companies that were doing it, and now, the big guys are doing it. The major insurance carriers are doing it. And there's a reason for it, because the attacks are not going to be minimized. They're not going to start going away anytime soon. To Mark's question, the U.S. is probably one of the primary targets, but there's a lot of other countries not too far. There's a lot of different studies and reports that I've seen and I read on a regular basis. But we are definitely a target for a lot of countries.
So, I mean, it's a deal about follow the money. I would think where there's more money to follow, that's where more attacks happen. Is that right? Or are some people just doing it to screw with folks?
Well, it used to be more of like what I think the latter part of what you said was more of like a fad. I think it's less now of a fad. It's more, it is follow the money. It is for extortion. And in some cases, it's for bragging rights. Some of these adversaries are very well known. They've got incredible reputations in that community. And so, they just want to have that recognition of being, look what I did. But I think now with law enforcement getting much more sophisticated, governments having, cybersecurity organizations and teams and departments that, they really need to make sure that, and they are making sure that they're as well protected as they can be.
So when you look at the common man, such as myself, we don't have an Alexa in our home because we thought, well, Alexa's going to be listening to us all the time. Yet I have a business laptop, a personal laptop, a business cell phone, a personal cell phone. My wife has a cell phone. My mother-in-law has a cell phone. When the kids were here, they had cell phones and laptops and all that too, and tablets. Aren't all these devices that have microphones listening to us all the time?
To an extent. I mean, there's protections against that. They do have the capability. And certainly we've heard a lot of, even where some security companies that, if it all comes down to who has the actual access to the technology. So, the biggest thing is bad people are going to do bad things.
Yeah.
And you try to prevent that as much as possible. And you do that in such a way, for screening and things like that, trying to do your best of vetting the employees and make sure you have the right kind of employee that fits your organization and fits the environment. And then, of course, from a technological standpoint, there are so many different products and technologies. And I always tell my clients, a lot of that comes down to, it depends on what your appetite for risk is. So some people say, okay, yeah, I want to do this and I want to do A to Z. Well, how much is A to Z going to cost? Well, you give them a number.
Right.
They're like, whoa, wait a minute. I think our appetite's a lot less than that. So
sure.
Let's figure out what it is. And so I think, it kind of goes to, there's a lot of people, especially now, especially in the COVID roller coaster ride that we're on. People are looking at it as, selling on value. And to me, value is really not a thing. It's really something that you have to uncover and you have to define, and then you work with your clients on helping to get agreement on. And I think too many times, I hear from a lot of people glibly saying, well, sell on value, sell them the value. Well, it's not a thing. It's really a combination of process. I mean, if you don't help your clients uncover and define what's most important to them and where they want to go, and the last part I think is probably equally, if not the most important, is then get that mutual consensus and agreement on it. So when I talk to my clients, it's really like, looking at it from what is your appetite for risk, and you also have to factor in, once again, I'm talking about small to medium-sized companies to the large enterprises companies. A lot of these attacks and breaches that have occurred, it's come from third parties. So the one that's probably the most famous is the Target breach.
Yeah.
And that came in through an HVAC company that was one of their vendors. So you, as the going concern or the going enterprise, in this case Target, you had your house in order. It was buttoned up and protected. But then you had a third-party vendor that you work with. And how many companies, even your own company, how many vendors do you have on your approved vendor list?
So let's talk about Target for a second. So did the HVAC company end up emailing something malicious that wasn't caught by the filters, or were they in Target using Wi-Fi and that's how someone got through? Do you know exactly how that happened?
I mean, I know a lot about it, but I can't really speak specifics to, to their environment, but it was accessed through a third-party vendor that gained access through the systems that were connected to Target's network. And because of that constant connectivity that they have, they were able to infiltrate their network environment.
So you hear stories and see, viral stories going on. One I remember was where some creeper was talking to, and I apologize that my lighting keeps going stupid, so I'm just going to be done playing with it now. Where in like a nursery where they had a camera, someone hacked into someone's house and was talking to the child in the room through the camera with the speaker. I mean, is that just super easy to do? Don't our routers have some sort of there's a password? So
yeah,
how do they get through that?
Passwords are, they're essential and they're necessary, but I think people just look at it, hey, I got a password, or I got a VPN, or I have antivirus, and that creates a false sense of security.
Okay.
And I think is it easy to do? No, but have the people that are doing it, have they practiced their art of deception for a long time and really, mastered their craft? Yes. But I think, if you look at our technology and the technology serving the world in which we live in, and by the way, it's only going to continue to go in this direction. Everything, and you might see the letters IoT, and that stands for the Internet of Things.
Right, exactly.
Anything and everything that is connected to the internet is potentially suspect. And so that's when you have things like in your phones, you have operating systems, and where you try to pervert, or that they actually add what they call rigidity into it and add security and protection into it to the best of their abilities. Then you have other environments where you look at, network protection, you look at endpoint protection, perimeter protection, and there's so many others. They actually call it defense in depth, and there's a whole different art on how you go about doing it. There's so many different technologies that are applied to that.
Okay.
Wrapped around policy and procedures, because keep in mind too, it depends on which industry you're in. Some of these industries, like in the financial industry, they're regulated. So you have oversight organizations that make sure that you are in compliance with the mandates that they have for your particular industry. And it's not limited to the financial industry. There's just, there's a vast number of industries that, are regulated and have compliance. So that's on the large enterprise side. I mean, from an individual in your home, I would highly encourage absolutely to have antivirus. I would highly encourage you, to have encryption. I would highly encourage you, to utilize it or use a VPN, because that's going to give you an added layer of security and an added layer of protection.
So let's get back to Alexa for a minute, or the Google version of it, whatever it is. First of all, do you have one of those?
No.
Why don't you have one?
I really don't have a need for it. I mean, my technological needs are pretty advanced. They're simplified, but I'm going to err on the side of caution because of who I am, what I know, and I try to mitigate the risk and the threats as much as possible.
So those have an opportunity for people to be listening regularly.
I wouldn't say listening. Let's just say that there is an opportunity that, yes, it could be infiltrated, but I would not say regularly. I mean, because, look at the number of devices that are out there. How many Alexas are out there? How many Googles are out there? Thousands, hundreds of thousands. And, you see something in the newspaper, you read something on the internet. that's just a small fraction. But it really comes down to the adversary and what they want and what their targets are and what they want to go after and the reason why they want to go after it.
So Phil's got a tongue-in-cheek question. Is this live stream secure? Are we safe?
When you say secure and safe in what context?
Yeah.
So can anybody be listening in and try to infiltrate it? I mean, I can't speak to the security measures of StreamYard, so I'm not familiar enough with it. I would imagine that they absolutely have that as a key priority. So let's kind of step back to the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay.
Look at Zoom. Zoom has just exploded as a platform, but as an organization, a lot of corporate America can't, and to this day won't use Zoom because of that. It was identified as a potential security risk. So it couldn't really be used in the business and the corporate world, in the corporate enterprise. My company, we can't use Zoom just for that reason alone. Now, to Zoom's credit, last time I checked, I think the version was 5.0, and they made a lot of major enhancements to significantly improve the platform and the security within it.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, I'm sure that they need to go even further before you're going to get the blessings of corporate America to say, yep, we can use this in our environment.
Yeah, I have a customer that I work with that whenever we're going to go on video, we have to use their platform because they use WebEx and they're not allowed to use anything other than WebEx. So what sets WebEx apart from, say, Microsoft Teams?
It's really more aligned to the company. So WebEx is a Cisco product. Microsoft Teams is the Microsoft one. You have several other platforms, and it's more vendor dependent than it is as to what. I'm sure that you would talk to a guy from Cisco, and they would tell you that this is why WebEx is better, and this is why you need to continue to use it, or you should consider using it. And I'm sure if you had the same conversation with Microsoft, they would say Teams is the same thing. The interesting thing is sometimes, you might be talking with somebody that, hey, I'm going to hold a Teams meeting. And this happens to me regularly where we use WebEx a lot. I'm more familiar with WebEx than I am Teams, but I'm equally comfortable. And the next thing you know, it's like, well, something happened. It's like, but my brain's thinking WebEx, and I'm actually operating in a Teams environment, and it's not doing what it's supposed to do the way it's supposed to do it. And so
I have the exact opposite issue when it occurs.
Yeah, you're going to have those nuances no matter what. I mean, that's going to happen. But I think a lot of it comes down to is it's really, if you adopt and embrace the standard, just make it unified for everybody, especially in your organization, so you can gravitate and everybody's operating from the same playing field.
So as we march forward with, I think working from home is here to stay at a certain level. I've had one customer tell me there's three groups of people. There's those that want to go back to the office for the social. There's those that need to go back to the office to be supervised. And then there's those that will say, I will never go back to the office. I will quit this job and go work remote for someone else if you try to make me go back to the office. So as we know, that one group is going to be there. And then there's other people who are like, comme ci, comme ça, do I really need to go to the office? Where do you see the greatest need for advances in cybersecurity for businesses with so many remote workers now?
I mean, it's robust today, but I definitely think, it all comes down to access points, perimeter, protecting the edge. And we have to get better at it. And then there's a lot of companies that have made significant investments and are going to continue to do so. And I think that, so by doing so, seeing who's trying to come into the front door, who's knocking on the front door, and if they do get through, at least be able have the ways to identify them, which once again, those capabilities are there, and then try and mitigate them from getting too far into the organization, too far into the environment, to where they then can lie dormant, laying in wait, moving laterally, and then eventually trying to make that way to, the crown jewels, get to the Holy Grail. And I think that's a lot of that's going to happen. I mean, I've talked to some very large companies and some CFOs and people I've worked with for years, and they said, look, we're a multinational company. Maybe 30, maybe 40% of our people are going to come back to an office.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's a lot of real estate. That's a lot of expense. And of course, the capitalization, they'll write that off over the course of time, but they're not coming back. They're just not coming back anytime soon.
Well, and I'm involved in multiple real estate groups because in cleaning, we're cleaning real estate, whether it's manufacturing real estate or commercial real estate, whatever, it's real estate. And what some organizations are saying is that, at least in multi-tenant buildings, the occupants, the tenants want larger suites now, because although they're only going to have 30% of the people are going to take up 3 times as much room.
Yep. Well, I know of some companies that they actually from March, they started redesigning the entire footprint of their office.
Sure.
And I know of one in Baltimore that if you walked in there today, every door that you walk through is opened by sticking your foot in front of a sensor. You have the receptionist now, as you walk into the building, has a thermometer where she's going to check your temperature. And every one of the desks have been completely redesigned to where they have, it's kind of like plexiglass, but they tried to make it as aesthetically appealing as possible.
Yeah.
Because the last thing you wanted to do was be sitting in a fishbowl. But still, that environment has changed forever. I mean, how many times did you walk in your office and it's like Monday morning, you're grabbing a cup of coffee, you're talking about the NFL games or what you did with your family on the weekend?
That's done.
That's done. It's not coming back.
That's done. I mean, in our organization, our policy, and this is why I'm kind of happy I work out of my home, and I did pre-COVID anyways because of just geographics of our office. And at our headquarters, you don't have to wear a mask at your desk, but if you walk the hallway, you do. And just annoying.
See, I work from home a lot too, and I hate it. I can't stand it. I'd much rather be out with people. Unfortunately, over the course of time, our business is essential. So throughout the entire period of pandemic, we've been working, and we've actually hired a lot of people in the process because of the projects we work on. But still, I mean, I miss the interaction. And
that's why I've been focusing on the manufacturing sector, because they seem to have their act together far more than commercial real estate. So, George, shockingly, we've gone 30 minutes already. And I think we could easily go another 30, but you know what? We're not going to, because then we'll bore everybody. So you've got the floor. You've got 2 minutes. What do you want people to remember?
So I'm not even going to talk about technology. I think more on the humility side of things, that we have a chance to be ourselves every day when we interact with people. And the only thing I would say to folks is just try to be mindful of allowing, if it's an existing client, if it's a prospect, figure out a way to allow them to be themselves, because they're dealing with a similar set of issues, and maybe issues that we don't even know about. So don't take that for granted. And then the other one is leadership. And I really love this particular topic because, leaders aren't really tied to a specific title. Just because you're a manager or a director or a vice president or something like that doesn't mean that you're necessarily a leader.
Right.
Leaders arise in times of situation and chaos. So I would say, as you go and work with your own organizations, and you either are a leader yourself, or you've identified that.
Mm-hmm.
In times of strife and chaos, people are looking for that. They're looking for that leadership. I mean, they want some kind of guidance and direction and order and purpose, because that gives them a semblance of hope and balance. So, I would say in that aspect, embrace leadership. If you are in that position, do as much and as best you can. And if you're not, support the people that are in that leadership. And to those senior executives that are listening, or to the senior executives on that call, pay attention to it, because your teams and your people really need that and want that now.
So I can't say it any better than Eric Bam just said it. George, you are amazing. You can take probably one of the driest topics on earth and make it exciting and thrill bound and timely for everyone. Thank you so much for being a part of my Litvak Leadership Live today. So many more questions I have for you, but we have to save them for later because
we'll do that another time.
Good. I'm glad you'd love to do it another time.
Thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. To my Megamind friends and family, you guys are awesome. Love you guys. Think the world of you. And thanks for having me, Sean.
All right. Thank you so much, world. Be blessed.